Hello students, so I am back again with the second part of the listeners. I hope you have listened to the video and seen the video properly and noted all the words and all the figures of speech that I had marked in the first part of the poem. Fine, so let's have a quick recap, isn't it? Because I think you need to just have a little bit of what we had already done, where we had stopped, and then we will move forward. Fine. So, we had stopped at that point. The last line where I had ended was, hearkening in an air stirred and shaken by the lonely traveller's call. Now, who is that lonely traveller? Okay, the traveller who had come all the way into this forest, into this dark forest on a horseback. Yes, so we know that. And what is the description of the house that he has reached? He has reached a house which is totally lonely. And which word tells us? If you go on to the, there is a word where it says yes, but only a host of phantom listeners. Midway in the poem, in the first page, 61, it says that dwelt in the lone house then. What do you mean by lone house? Single. It is the only house in the vicinity, means where the poet could see. He could not see any other house within his sight. It was a dark, deep forest, and it was night time. He describes that by the use of the word moonlit door. So we know that it is dark at night, and he is there to deliver a message or to meet somebody. We don't know yet why he has come and whom he has come to meet. But he is knocking on the door, and has anybody answered? No. Has anybody even leaned out and seen? Have we got any inkling of any living being in the house? No, because no head from the leaf-fringed sill leaned over and looked into his grey eyes. So, leaned over and looked, that's alliteration. So, there is nobody. But at the same time, there is no one from the world of men, but there are a host of phantom listeners. Yes, that we got to know, because he says, but only a host of phantom listeners that dwelt in the lone house then stood listening in the quiet of the moonlight to that voice from the world of men. Whose voice? The traveller. Now he is the only representative of the world of men. Okay, now, and the people are listening. And who are those people? They are ghosts. They are not real human beings. They are phantom listeners. Now how is he so sure that there is somebody who's listening to him? He says, he stood listening in the quiet of the moonlight to that voice from the world of men, stood thronging the faint beams on the dark stair that goes into the empty hall, hearkening in an air stirred and shaken by the lonely traveller's call. Now he could make out that they are a little unnerved. You know, when suddenly somebody, you are sitting quietly in a room and enjoying a piece of music or reading a book, or maybe lost in your own world, you're lost in some thoughts, you're thinking about something, or maybe even studying, yes, suddenly somebody comes into the door. How do you feel? Startled. So the ghosts, they are leading, they are in their own peace, they are very peaceful, everything is all quiet there. Fine. Suddenly, amidst that, suddenly the traveller comes and they are disturbed. So he says, air stirred and shaken, just like in a cup of water when you just stir it. What happens to the water? Everything is shaken. So the whole house is shaken, and he could feel that. He could feel that strange presence of somebody there listening. You know, sometimes it happens when I'm all alone in the house. Sometimes I sometimes feel that probably there's someone else with me. It's really eerie and spooky, but sometimes you feel that, isn't it? Then when you switch on the TV or you have the mobile, or when you start talking to somebody or something like that, then it disappears. But when you're lonely in a house, you feel that there is something else probably. So, but here he seriously feels, because there is some kind of a sixth sense which tells him that there is someone there on the other side. And that was the only, and he felt in his heart their strangers. That is what we come to now. We move on to the next line, that after the introduction of, after the recap of what has happened earlier, now we come to this line. And he felt in his heart their strangeness. Like I told you, he could sense it. He could sense the weirdness around, that there's something eerie, the spookiness in the air. He could feel that, okay? And and there's stillness answering his cry. Now, how can a stillness answer somebody? Silence. Can silence be an answer? Yes, it has. The silence is an answer, that I am listening to you, but I don't wish to respond. I will not respond. So either showing defiance, or maybe I told you last time in the last video that probably they are not able to communicate. See, they belong to a different world, and the traveler belongs to the different world, that is the world of men. He is a part of the living, and they are a part of the dead. Okay, so there is a wall in between the living and the dead. So probably they can never meet, they can never communicate. It's impossible to communicate. So that is what probably the poet is trying to tell us, that there are so many mysteries of the human life which is beyond our control, and the mystery of it lures us, it tempts us, but we are unable to get any answers for that. We keep guessing, but we don't know what lies beyond death, what lies beyond our life. Nobody knows. We still guess. We are just guessing. So, and he felt in his heart their strangers. So he has understood that there is some eerie presence over there, and his heart. One thing, students, when a person dies, the soul is immortal. The soul lives on. So they say that when the soul is separated from the body, then it joins the other side of death, or probably it can it gets ready for a new life. Those who believe in rebirth, the soul gets ready to be born again. But the soul and that soul which is no longer a part of the body, still, now that probably the soul to soul communication is there. The souls which are there in the house, probably they are communicating with his soul, but he is not able to understand that. But this much is sure, that there is someone. There is someone. And that is very frightening. It creates a very eerie atmosphere, and that is what Walter Delamere is famous for. His supernaturalism is so beautifully portrayed by just a few words. He can paint a picture with words. So the poem is full of imagery. That is imagery for you. Imagery is a figure of speech by which a picture is painted by words, by using different words. So he has said that he felt in his heart their strangeness, their stillness answering his cry. So they are communicating to him by silence. Such a beautiful line. And while his horse moved, now I told you, we can be aware of the silence only in the presence of some noise. Now he suddenly understood that there is silence all around when he suddenly heard again the horse. He comes back. Now the poet is bringing us from the world of ghosts to the world of reality. He keeps, moving from one to the other. So he makes us realize about this tangible world where the traveler is present. He's standing, he's a representative, and his horse is also a representative of that world. While his horse moved, cropping the dark turf, neath the starred and leafy sky. Neath. Neath means beneath. This is the poetic license. You know, a poet can have, like a driver has a license to drive, so the poet also gets a license. And what is that license? To play around with words for the sake of effect, for the sake of rhyme, rhythm, and so on. Okay, so this is the poetic license. He has, if he had said beneath, then it would have stopped the rhythm of the poem. It would have spoiled the rhythm. So he says neath. Fine. So there's stillness answering his cry while his horse moved. His horse is moving, cropping the dark turf. Now look at the word, dark turf. What is the meaning of turf? Turf is grass. Dark turf. Dark, why is it dark? One, because it's night time, there is no sun rays. And second, because it is a very, very deep, dense forest. And in a dense forest, you can imagine the sun rays hardly percolate, and so the grass, color of the grass is generally very dark. It's blackish green in color. Okay, that is what. So all this is very, very significant. See, by just using one or two words, the poet is telling us exactly what the entire picture looks like. Okay, so we need to take those cues. So read each word carefully. There's stillness answering his cry while his horse moved, cropping. Cropping again, chewing. He's eating, cropping the dark turf neath the starred and leafy sky. Now another beautiful expression. You can look up above and he sees that it's a starry night. So stars, again it indicates of a night. Okay, night setting. And leafy, why is it leafy? Could someone tell me? Think, why is it leafy? Can a sky be full of leaves? Yes, when there are so many trees. So you cannot you can see the stars from the holes in the tree, and you can see the sky, but mostly the sky is covered by the canopy of the trees. The canopy is the right word. Canopy is like an umbrella kind of a structure of the leaves in a tree. Now they are like an umbrella. So the whole sky of the forest is covered with those leaves of the tall trees of the forest. So the leafy sky. So it's again, it adds to the suspense and fear. Can you imagine, you look up in the sky and it's all dark and it's all full of leaves, the trees, it's scary, isn't it? And he is all alone and nobody is answering him, and he's also sure that there are some ghosts. What, I don't know how he's still holding on. I would have run over from there, isn't it? I don't know, forget about whoever has told me whatever job. I would have run for my life. I would have been so scared now. But this traveler is very bold. He's very, very dutiful, very bold. He stays on and he tries to do his best. He makes another attempt. So suddenly he smote on the door. Suddenly gets, I told you, the eerie atmosphere is now getting too much for him to bear. It's difficult to survive in this atmosphere, knowing that he's the only one alive over there and nobody is responding, and everything is so unpredictable. Okay, so it's an unearthly atmosphere that is created. For he suddenly smote on the door even louder and lifted his head. Now nobody is leaning down, so he lifted his head and he shouted, "Tell them I came!" Okay, and no one answered. So he shouts, "Tell them." So he has probably come to meet a few people and nobody opens the door. So he says, "Okay, fine, whoever is listening, I'm sure somebody is listening to me. Tell them I came." No one answered. "That I kept my word. I have done my work. I have kept my promise." Okay, so I have kept my promise, he said. Never the least stir made the listeners. So he says that even then there is no one who spoke and no one who responded. So you can imagine how the traveler must be feeling when nobody is choosing to respond. Now at this point we will stop here and I will do another video after a few days, and you will see the concluding part of the poem. I will not complete it today, but I will just discuss a few questions on page 63. Take out your book, page 63. When and where does the action of the poem take place? I'm sure you've got the answer. When? At night. And where? In the deep forest. Fine. Now, which words or phrases tell that the plants around the house have overgrown? Which one? Can you tell me? Which are the words that the plants around the house have overgrown? Ferny floor. Ferny floor. That means it is overgrown. And there is one more, the leaf fringed sill. So there is a sill, window sill, which is full of leaves. So you can imagine that it is an uninhabited house by using these words. Which word from the near start of the poem suggests that this house is quite big and grand? Which is the word? Remember the bird? Yes, yes. It flew out of the turret. And what is a turret? A turret is always at the top. It is like a tower at the top of a huge house. Remember the first video, I showed you a picture of a huge mansion, and on top there is a tower, and that is the turret. That indicates, the word turret indicates that it is a big, huge house. What is stirred and shaken by the traveller's shouts? What is stirred and shaken? The air. The air around is stirred and shaken, and also the phantom listeners. They are also, all the inhabitants of the house, of the haunted house, are all stirred and shaken along with that bird. That bird is also a part of that house. The bird was also shaken, and suddenly when he smote on the door, the bird flew out of the window. Which line tells us that the traveller had made a promise that he would come to the house? Tell them I came. We just finished. Tell them I came and that I have kept my promise. So he had made a promise to come and meet someone. So he has kept by. He has been dutiful. So the traveller is a dutiful person who has done his duty. Fine. The last one we haven't done yet. Now we will move on to 1G. 1G. Which words are used to describe the following? The door. What is the door? Which word comes? Moonlit door. The door which was lit by the moon. Forest floor. The ferny forest floor. Correct. The sill. The leaf fringed sill. The sill which is covered with leaves. The traveller's eyes. Do you remember? Yes, it's the grey eyes. And I told you that also has a significance. Grey is something which is dull, which is it is also symbolic of some confusion or something which you cannot understand. The dark and white, the black and white are very clear, but a grey is a midway between, and that is something which is incomprehensible, which we cannot understand. Grey is something that is incomprehensible, hard to understand. So his eyes are grey because he hasn't understood. He is in a difficult situation. He is perplexed. He is baffled. He is confused. Yes. Yeah. The house. Lone house. Remember? The lone house. And the sky. We just completed it. The starry, leafy sky. Yes. The turf. The dark turf. And the hoof we haven't done yet. We will complete it in the last one. But interestingly, I want you to do question number 2. What is the rhyming scheme of the poem? Let us go ahead and see once more from the beginning of the poem. What do we do in a rhyming scheme? We look at the last word of every sentence. Last word of every sentence, and we see whether it rhymes with the next one. Fine. The first word, the last word in the first sentence is traveller. Does it rhyme with the next word door in the next sentence? See, the first line is there anybody there? Said the traveller. So the traveller is your first word, which we have to see for the rhyming scheme. And the second one, knocking on the moonlit door. So traveller and door, they don't rhyme. So traveller is A and door is B. Got it? Now the next one is grasses. Is that also rhyming? Grasses. Grasses also do not rhyme with traveller or door. So you will put it as C. Yes. Of the forest ferny floor. Yes, this rhymes. Which one? With door. So it is A, B, C, B. Clear? A, B, C, B. And we write it in small letters. What is the rhyming scheme? So you write it down A, B, C, B, and now you match up. You go ahead in the same way with the other lines and see whether it follows. I'm sure you will be able to do it now. Okay? A, B, C, B. A, B, C, B. Is that clear? Fine. Now, number 3, question number 3. This is a narrative poem written in the third person. That is the right answer, because now what is a narrative? A narrative is a story. Narrative is a story. And who is saying the story? Is the traveler saying it himself? No. The poet is talking about the traveler, poet is talking about everything. So it is a third person narration. So question number 3 will be the right answer. Now go on to the next page, page 64. No, not page 64. We move on to page 60. Fine, let's move on to page 64. Epithets. We have epithets. Now look at the epithet here, the moonlit, phantom listeners, and the leaf fringe. These are epithets, and I had told you in the previous video also, epithets are adjectives which are actually nouns. In the poem has used a compound epithet, the poet has used 2 single ones. Now they are actually which describe a noun. Epithets will always describe a noun. So therefore you need to understand what these epithets are, and I want you to do question number 1 of epithets, page 64. Question number 1, there are a list of words given, pair of words given, and you could form interesting epithets out of them. We will discuss in the online class. Fine, on page 64. Okay students, so we will meet in the next video and I will finish the poem. Until then, practice all the words that we have done, all the figures of speech that we have used, and try to remember everything. Fine. Bye bye students. Take care, stay safe, and we'll meet soon.